understand it, and the rest of them do. So I'd stand for questions and strongly ask you to support this bill with a strong vote. I'd like to see this committee come out with locked arms. This is where Wyoming's at.
Thank you, Senator Driscoll. Representative Provenza, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do any of you know how many states have signed the resolution, and how many are needed before the article? I assume there's an Article 5 convention in here. No, there's not. Okay, never mind.
14 on, right?
Now, there's, Mr. Chairman, Representative President, there's 22 states so far that have adopted similar resolutions. And there's 11 more considering it right now. So it's really taken a movement across the nation. A couple of little things on the spending that isn't reported. Each one of those little, and I'm sure most of you know this, each one of those little mailers in my district was right at $4,000. I had 12 of them against me, so there's $50,000 that was spent against me that wasn't required to be reported. And that's just my race in my little district up there. And I was not one of the ones that was heavily targeted. So the amount of money that these things require and the propaganda it puts out, a lot of it was anything from disinformation to blatant lies. And it's, I'm sure you all experience the same thing. So it is critical that people do understand where this money comes from. There's been questions on the First Amendment. And what we're down to right now is the guy with the most money has the most rights. The only way to get around Citizens United is either wait for another Supreme Court ruling that reverses it, or with an amendment. So this is calling for the amendment. Any questions? We'd be
Appreciate
happy
that,
to work
Senator.
on them.
Appreciate that, Senator Cooper. Committee, any questions, Senator Cooper? Representative Harshman.
Quick comment. Appreciate you bringing the bill. I wish you'd asked me to co-sponsor. It's probably the best little bill of the whole session, really. I think though, you've talked a lot about dark money, but it's also about reasonable limits to spending, and we're a little bit insulated because we're not a early primary swing state. People in those states, I mean, it's just, can't even turn on it. Your TV is just nonstop, and so we're even a little bit insulated. But I would say this too, and on the free speech argument, and it's the crux of the whole thing, right? But, and it's always moving. And it's the old thing, the old saying, your right's in where my nose begins. And you have the right to free speech, but you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. And so we do limit speech. And I think this is something that needs to move forward because it works. Money works. And it should be about really the quality of the candidate. And so I appreciate you bringing it forward, Senators. And hopefully we can get them moved up on committee of the whole and get it going. Thank you. Yeah.
Committee, any other questions of the good senators from down the hallway? Representative Storr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just want to make sure I understand. So my understanding is 38 states have to pass through their legislature some form like this in order to get that to be considered. And do they all have to be the same if you're not going to go to a convention? So I'm just curious. Thanks.
Senator.
Chairman Byron, Representative Storr, I don't believe that the 38 number is there. It's got to be a majority. Because it is not a convention of the states item, this is simply asking for an amendment. It's a lot simpler to get done, is my understanding.
Thank you, Senator Cooper, for that. Representative Worf.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm struggling to come up with a question. I've taken a lot of heat because I signed on to this. I signed on to it because I made an attempt to join your chamber a couple of years ago, and I had money that was dumped on me. I was called just about every name you could call. And so I understand this, but I guess one of the things that I wrestle with, I'm kind of on the fence because I want to say it's not right, but on the other hand, I wrestle with things. You know, what do you do when you got an organization that has membership in this state, but they have a lobbyist that's in another state that's sending stuff in? I mean, does that impact? Does that address this? I mean, to me, most organizations that I know, they're identifying that it's coming from them. What happened to me was it was a bogus organization, and I tracked them down. I found out who the people were that did it, and it came from the south, the state to the south of us, but they were people that ran a gubernatorial campaign in Wyoming that targeted me because I didn't back their guy. And so I guess it kind of gets a little muddy to me how we track these dollars, because, you know, outside dollars, what's outside dollars? I know you get money all over and you run for campaigns. I've never sought money outside the state, but I know a lot of people that do run for office get money from all over. I'm fortunate the county I live in, I haven't needed it, but I can tell you it hurt me when I tried to advance to the upper chamber. And I guess I really wrestle with how we ferret out what's dark money and what's not dark money. I guess that's the question I have, is how are we differentiating between legitimate campaign money and dark money? I don't know the answer to that question.
Thank you, Representative Worf, and I would push back a little bit on the word advancing to the next chamber. I don't know if that's an advancement, but Senator Cooper?
Chairman Byron, Representative Worf, one thing you can do is what I did. I had a mailer came out in my favor. It was not derogatory to my opponent. It was in my favor, but it was from a group that I didn't solicit. And I very publicly, in all of my local newspapers, there's 5 of them or 6 of them, I think, in my district, bought the ad that said, "This is not for me. I don't approve this." And I think everybody who has some money like that should stand on their integrity and say, "I appreciate the thought, but this is not my thoughts, and this is not representing me." Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cooper. Committee, any other questions of the good senators?
Mr. Chairman,
Senator
I'd
Driscoll.
pile on that a tiny bit. Chairman, Representative Ward, we actually have halfway rules. So right now, if you play by the rules, your donors will go up on the website and your name will be on the mailer, and it happens. And that's your clean money area. That's up front. Is Citizens for Joe come out and you look at the Secretary of State's website, you can see who Citizens Joe is, and you can see who gave him money. The dark money is just the opposite. It's big amounts of money that get poured in. And sometimes they have a bogus organization as yours, but often they don't have anything on them. They came out of a printer in West Virginia and they got mailed in bulk. And you have no way to respond to something that's totally wrong. And that's where I stand at, is 2 things go with dark money. One, you need to know where the money comes from for everybody. And you and I have been there over a certain gun group at one point in time. And I'm a believer, if you're going to send out political flyers, you need to cough up who funded it, if it's a billionaire from China or somebody down the road. And so that's where I stand on dark money, is free speech is fair. I can stand up and I can stretch things a long ways. But you need to know who said it, because it affects everybody once you know where it is. It's about that sunshine, a little transparency. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Driscoll. Representative Worf, please.
And Senator, or Chairman, Senator Driscoll, one of the problems that I ran up against was the organization had filed under a federal filing. And as such, they don't need to disclose until after our elections are done. And so I guess that's one thing I would ask to maybe look at, seeing if there's a way we can incorporate something like that into here, because I don't know that that's captured in here. But to me, that's the way that I saw outside money weighing in on state races that really, to me, isn't fair, because I agree. If you're gonna disclose it, they should have to disclose it. If they're running on a state race, it should be disclosed.
Wouldn't you
Wouldn't
agree?
you think?
Wouldn't you agree?
Wouldn't you
Thank
agree?
Representative Wharf. Representative Provenza, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So one of the things that happened during the last primary were that there were mailers sent out before the filing date, right? And our Secretary of State said that you don't have to have paid for by on those mailers, which I very much disagree with. I think that that would be the most transparent and accountable thing to the people of Wyoming to require a paid for by on each mailer that is meant to attack potential political candidates. And looking at this bill, I guess, do you have any concerns that the Secretary of State will not follow this law if we pass it and won't send the letter, given that there's no enforcement mechanism?
Senator Driscoll? Or Senator Cooper,
Are
whoever?
there trees in the forest?
Senator Cooper?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Provenza, I'm scheduled for a trip to Washington DC in June. I'll deliver them by hand if I need to.
Thank you, Senator. Committee, any other questions? Let's, Chairman Landon, please.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick comment if I might, and Representative Provenza, I would certainly hope so. I mean, if we pass good laws and good sunshine pieces of legislation, I would hope that all of our officials would support it and be proud of it. You know, we're representing Wyoming. If somebody's hiring 4 or 5 people to walk a district and they're from Virginia, it ought to be reported on a campaign ledger somewhere, because that's a cost of campaigning. So many things we could talk about today, but I think it's been a good discussion. I hope you support the bill.
Thank you, Chairman Landon. Representative Jarvis, and then we'll go over to our fellow House members, but please, Representative Jarvis, proceed.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Senators. This may not necessarily be a question, but I can say, being someone who experienced some pretty detrimental false mailers that went out, and being unable to find the source of where they came from to be able to address it was pretty humbling. And I think there's a lot of conversation that goes on about people being willing to run for these offices because of the fear of something like that happening. And I think if this does nothing more than just shed light on this is happening, and we're attempting to start the first steps of doing something about it, I immensely appreciate the efforts and what this is standing for. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Jarvis. Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In a little bit of a response to Representative Wharf's question, keep in mind that we're not dictating to our representatives on the East Coast which of these amendments that might be floating around out there that they should support. All this is doing is asking them to support one. That amendment, you know, is going to be very, very carefully thought out and include the kind of questions that we are having, because other people are asking those same questions. So the process, it's my understanding, will be that they will come to a consensus in their caucus and bring forward an amendment when the time is right. And that's how it's been explained to me. So we're not telling them what to put in that amendment. We're just simply asking them to consider an amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cooper. With that, committee, we're going to go ahead and ask our fellow House member to come up if he so chooses. Any other electeds in the room I'm missing, feel free to come up. Member committee, we have not made an action on the bill yet, so certainly we'll have an opportunity to make comments. Let's kind of try to keep to the questions, but I see our fellow House member has a similar haircut to our senators, so with that, I'll welcome you to the stage.
Thank you, Chairman. members of the committee. Representative J.D. Williams. I don't really have anything to add to what we've heard. I thought it was laid out well. But the horse has left the barn, and it's where we're at in this conversation, and it's a shame, really, because there's dark money on both sides, and it makes those of us that are from here, the home team, that sometimes is the only way we can push back against the out-of-state influence. And then it puts Wyoming in a bad spot and puts all of us in a bad spot. And it certainly makes us all miss a better, simpler time. And so thank you for considering this, and thank you to the bringer. I'm proud to be on the bill.
Thank you, Representative Williams. Really appreciate that. Committee, any questions of our good colleague? Thank you, Representative Williams. Appreciate that. Any agencies in the room that would like to speak on Senate Joint Resolution 8? Any agencies? Any public comment on Senate Joint Resolution 8? Public comment in the room, please come up, introduce yourself. Welcome to House TRW. Appreciate you being here today.
Thank you, Chairman Byron and committee. My name is Vicki Swenson, and I come to you as one of the little people who campaign for good candidates. I've campaigned for more than 10 years at some level, very actively the last couple campaigns. And just from my experiences that I've campaigned for some pretty great candidates. Matter of fact, one who lost his bid for election, one of the finest people and legislators I've ever known. And he lost because of this outside money, and he was just overspent. And other candidates that I've campaigned for, it's almost like I've got to the point like maybe I shouldn't campaign for people because they're probably going to lose. And they're good people, and they need to have people campaigning for them, but we can't battle against the outside money, the dark money, whatever it is it's really destroying, I believe, it's destroying Wyoming government. And I think to do something like this I've been hoping and praying for years that we could do this. Matter of fact, there was a campaign, a petition campaign to get the votes to put Wyoming to be able to go to a Congress. And my part of that was not so much that we actually got to Congress, that it was to make people aware of what was going on. And so we've been working on this a long time. So when I saw this bill, I almost cried, oh my goodness gracious, we're gonna get something. So please just know that what you do is really important to all of us. And I know how hard it is to get here, especially in this campaign environment. So thank you, and thank you for giving me a chance to speak.
Ms. Swenson, thank you so much for that testimony. We really appreciate it. Committee, any questions of Swenson? Not saying any. Really appreciate you being here today and sharing those thoughts. Public comment, any more public comment in the room? Seeing none, I'm gonna go ahead and we're still off Zoom, I assume. Are we live on Zoom yet or no?
Mr. Chairman, I'm actually live, so I'm recording and live.
Oh, okay. So do we have a way to bring the one person in or no? Oh, we do, okay. I believe we have a Brian Boyle. Brian, if you can hear me, accept that invite, unmute your mic and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon to all members of the committee. My name is Brian Boyle, and I'm the General Counsel and Chief Program Officer for American Promise, which is an organization that's mobilizing support for an amendment to the Constitution that would make it clear that states should have the ability to decide whether and how to regulate the influence of money in their political systems. And I want to be respectful of your time, so I just briefly want to touch on a few things. First, to pick up on the theme which Senator Gaskell mentioned of local control, because I think he hit the nail on the head. This amendment is addressing a very specific problem, which is that right now in the United States, if you ask the question, who decides whether and how we can regulate the role of money in our system? The answer is basically the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court alone. And it's been that way for the past 5 decades. So this resolution addresses that problem by making it clear that states should have the ability to decide whether and how to regulate money. Secondly, I just wanted to give a few concrete examples of how the status quo is actually playing out in the states right now. So first, in the state of Alaska a few years ago, they were really concerned about out-of-state money that was flowing into their elections. They felt that it was really interfering with the electoral system. So they wanted to set some different limits on that out-of-state money to really prioritize the Alaskan constituents and voters. So they passed a law to do that. And then lo and behold, guess what happens? That law winds up challenged in court and struck down by the Ninth Circuit, applying the Supreme Court cases of Citizens United and McCutcheon versus FEC. Just a couple of years ago in the state of Maine, they were concerned by almost $100 million of foreign money. These are from foreign governments and foreign-owned corporations flowing into their state's ballot elections. So in the state of Maine, they passed a law with the support of 86% of all Maine voters to keep that money out of their elections. And guess what happened with that law? Within a month, it was in court being challenged, and the law was actually prevented from taking effect by a federal district court, and it's still tied up in litigation in the First Circuit. And then the last example I wanted to give is even more recently in June in Ohio, under the leadership of Governor Mike DeWine, Ohio passed a law to try to curb the influence of foreign money in their systems. You may have heard, for example, of Swiss billionaire Hans-Jörg Weiss, who has spent hundreds of millions of dollars in American elections. Ohio's law was meant to address that. And again, Ohio's law ended up in federal district court, initially enjoined by the district court, and it's still caught up in litigation in the Sixth Circuit. And all I want to say is, listen, we don't know what the Sixth Circuit or the First Circuit or the Supreme Court might ultimately decide. But the point is, it actually shouldn't be courts deciding these questions, because the questions involved in these laws are policy questions that should be subject to the reasonable judgment of lawmakers like yourselves. That's what this amendment, you passing this resolution would have real impact, because what states and the American people are ready for a serious conversation about a constitutional amendment to address this problem. So thank you again for your time. And if there are any other procedural questions, I would be happy to answer those as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Boyle. Any questions from the committee? Not seeing any. I have a quick question, if you don't mind, Mr. Boyle. You mentioned a fellow from Switzerland. Do we know where he lives?
I think we do, Mr. Chairman. I believe he's of Wyoming.
He lives in Wyoming. And do we have any idea of what kind of money he may or may not have spent? Is that data available, or?
It's upwards of hundreds of millions of dollars.
Hundreds of millions of dollars. All right. Thank you, Mr. Boyle. I really appreciate you zooming in today. I'm glad we get our technical difficulties worked out, and hopefully next time we can invite you to join us here at the best capital in the world.
Thank you. I'd love that. Thank you all.
Thank you. Any other public comments from in the room? Going once, going twice. With that, I'm going to close public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure? Everyone has moved the bill, but I'm going to give credit to Representative Provenza, seconded by Representative Harshman. Senate Joint Resolution 8 Committee, what you want to work it? Do we have any amendments? As my good vice chair always mentions, this came over in a white copy. It's white. I think a lot of work has been put into this. I also am a co-sponsor, so but happy to discuss amendments if you have any. Question, do we want a question being called? Any discussion on the bill now that we're already at our question stage? Sure. Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One thing I'll say is it is getting harder and harder for regular people to run for a citizen legislature. And I think that is a grave disservice to the state of Wyoming. Obviously, nationally, this is also a problem. So I'm going to be supporting this bill, and it'll be a shame to see anybody vote no on it.
Thank you, Representative Provenza. Committee, any other comments? Question being called. This will be a roll call vote for Senate Joint Resolution 8.
Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote for Senate Joint Resolution 8. Representative Campbell.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Connolly has left an aye vote. Representative Harshman.
Aye.
Representative Jarvis.
Aye.
Representative Provenza.
Aye.
Representative Storr. Representative Thayer. Representative Worf.
Aye.
Chairman Byron.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, you have 9 ayes.
Appreciate that. We can discuss, if we do make it tomorrow up the list, we can certainly number of co-sponsors that can carry that for us. We'll discuss later. With that, we're gonna move to Senate File 144. Invite our good Senator Driscoll back up to talk about Wyoming Ireland Trade Commission. And he's promised me he will try to beat his last record, but Bill has certainly got a lot more in it, so we look forward to learning more. Thank you, Senator Driscoll, please.
Mr. Chairman, or Chairman Byron, committee, thank you very much. Bring you Senate File 144, Wyoming Ireland Trade Commission. You heard on the last bill that it might be the best good little bill that you've had all session. Well, this one's better. This is motherhood and apple pie, folks. So Wyoming Ireland Trade Commission, I have a background just a little, I am Irish. We're an old family of pirates, and I've become pretty good friends with number of the Irish, where the president of the Irish Senate was here for Frontier Days last year, and they reached out to me. 14 other states have done this. This is actually a cheap way to enter into trade with other countries. Wyoming already does in the hundreds of millions of dollars of trade. Some of our biggest companies in Wyoming, i.e. you look at Microsoft's data center, a lot of their base operations that deals back and forth are actually located in Ireland. It's the gateway to the European Union. They're actually the trade-free end of it. The country has reached out to us, and we've reached back. And this bill literally puts in place an ability for us to deal as a state with a country to bring trade to Wyoming. And that's really the base of it, is goodwill and trade. We've already got a good base of it, and we've got a lot in common with Ireland. You know, their base industries are ag, tourism, and they have something that we don't have, is they purchase their energy, they don't produce it. So they're also a great customer on the back end of it on our energy. So as we go through the bill, basically the first part of it's, you know, we're just into definitions on the thing. We create a commission on the thing, Wyoming Ireland Trade Commission. Page 2 is the membership of it. 2 people from the governor's office, 2 people from the House of Representatives, 2 from the Senate. 1 member of the House is the minority leader of the House, 1 of the minority leader of the Senate, and 1 person to be appointed by the board after it's put together. Members selected by the governor and board each be a representative. You'll have on page 3, Wyoming Public Institution of Higher Education is one of the members. Irish American community in Wyoming is interested in furthering trade between Wyoming and Ireland. That's probably about 80% of the state. I look, it's quite a little red hair up there where you're at. Wyoming industry engaged or seeking to engage in trade with Ireland. Like I said, I've had numerous people reach out to me. I had no clue how much trade there was going on with Ireland already. Wyoming Business Association, Trade Organization, Economic Development Organization, or Chamber on the bottom of page 3. We go on to it. Members of the commission who aren't legislative members serve for a 2-year term. Legislative members serve for the 2-year biennial session, which they're appointed to the commission, remain on it. If you quit, you get reappointed. You don't get it gets refilled due there on a vacancy. Appoint authority for any member may remove the member without cause. So that's kind of an interesting one, substitute another member. Go to the bottom, page 4. Commission shall hold board meetings not less than once each quarter. Meetings be held at the call of the chairman. Initial meeting of the commission annually thereafter. Members shall select from the appointed legislators 1 member to serve as chairman. Majority of members of the commission shall constitute a quorum. That's actually happening. There's 14 other states have done this. This is kind of the model they're following, same thing. On to page 5, chairman appoint from the commission subcommittees and subcommittee chairman. Line 7, this has got a little necessary clerical administrative support for the commission will be furnished, and it says council, it's the Wyoming Business Council is what they're referring to. So Non-legislative members don't get any compensation, but they're reimbursed for per diem and travel, just like we are with other governor-type appointments. Public officials are considered on official business or agency, so if they're an agency person, their agency's gonna eat their costs. Legislative, we get the normal legislative, you're gonna get your salary per diem, et cetera, on it. On to page 6, and this is kind of the meat of it. The purpose of the Wyoming Trade Commission shall be to advance, promote, and encourage business and other mutually beneficial activities between Wyoming and Ireland, including bilateral trade and investment. And the investment's important. They're big-time leaders on some of the blockchain type stuff in the advanced business world that we're in. Joint action on policy issues through mutual interest. Business and academic exchanges, we already have some of that, and this will lead probably to the university being able to exchange. Mutual economic support, mutual investment in the respective infrastructure, and any other opportunities. The last section 2 is reporting deal and includes recommendations, and actually they can recommend legislation. Does not make a committee. It'd go through one of our committees, much as some of the other ones we do. And then the last of its definitions of the bill. And then we're just down to boilerplate on the end of it, and it's effective immediately on completion of the act. So this is just a very low-cost way. It's budget neutral. I think there's $14,000 or something in it. It's a low-cost way for us to try to open the door. I'd point out to you a few years ago, and I'm pretty proud of it, I did something very similar. We have a trade office in Taiwan now that I think we're into six-figure millions with Taiwan at this point in time, and a good part of that has come right out of that office. Wyoming's reaped really good benefits off some of these low investments, and I'd ask your favorable consideration and stand for questions.
Thank you, Senator Driscoll. Committee, any questions of the bringer? Thank you, Senator. Good job on time
7,
there.
6, timing.
I timed you, I'll tell you later.
Just checking.
Appreciate that. Any other electeds in the room? Good? Good, Senator? Okay. Yeah, please, departments, please come up. Chat with us about Senate File 144. Introduce yourself. Great to see you. And House TRW finally.
Good to see you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ron Goldberg, Strategic Partnerships Director for the Wyoming Business Council. I do not have red hair. But yeah, I just wanted to be here, available, take any questions. The Business Council, if we're going to go down this path, we like this trade commission approach. As the good senator mentioned, we've opened Wyoming Asia Pacific Trade Office in Taiwan, and this commission looks like a good opportunity to put collective heads together from business, industry, cultural, tourism, higher education, really vet those opportunities and look at that. And the Business Council would administer the minimum quarterly meetings, so kind of like we do with our board meetings already. So, but beyond that, happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Goldberg. Committee, any questions of the Business Council? Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure if this is necessarily a question you can answer. I know the Trade Commission with Taiwan, right? Yeah, is already in place, and so now we're adding Ireland. Are they just too different that having one commission that would oversee Wyoming in trade with other countries? Have you talked about, would there be value in just establishing one commission to oversee all of those transactions, or is there value in keeping them separate? So this is Wyoming, Taiwan, this is Wyoming, Ireland. I just was curious as to your discussions or thoughts on that.
Mr. Goldberg.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Campbell, good question. I think they're very different probably, and that's why I mentioned we started with a trade office in Taiwan in 2018. On Ireland, we would be starting with a commission. And I think, I don't want to speak for the senator, but from our approach, we like this commission approach and kind of get our collective heads together, see where the opportunities are. But we've kind of, there's opportunities that it's a long play. either way, both of these, but I think it's kind of cool to see how both work. But you're looking at very different markets and opportunities and find out what those opportunities are.
Senator Driscoll.
Chairman Byron, Representative Campbell, yeah, when we did the Ireland trade deal, and it was a big part of it was me, and we direct funded that, and it was fairly expensive. It was, and there is no commission. We just stood an office up within Wyoming Business Council, and it was brought to me on the Trade Commission. I like the commission much better because it doesn't have that upfront cost. It doesn't have employees. And it also, back to being separate, it's really specific to the country. So we can take, i.e., some of these businesses south of town here, and they actually, the original bill was set up for them to help fund this commission because they have direct economic ties that it makes sense for us to do face-to-face deal that creates jobs in Wyoming and creates business opportunities for Wyoming and vice versa. And so I think the commission approach, you know, if I was gonna be here longer, I'd probably look at more of them, is whatever we can do that brings jobs and money to Wyoming. I'm in favor of it, is particularly if we don't have to spend a bunch of money to do it, that we get buy-in from players, not from government. So, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Driscoll. Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this could be for either of you, but, you know, we're having lots of conversations at the federal level about tariffs and limiting trade with our bordering countries. And so I'm trying to understand the benefit and value of a trade commission with Ireland when we're also kind of at somewhat of a trade war, and why we need this. So, and I'm not as familiar with what we do with Taiwan, and so maybe that's on me, and I need some education on that. But yeah, in terms of the broader conversation that we're having as a country and then doing this, I would like just some help on what the real benefits are here.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Driscoll, please.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Provenza, thank you. That's the biggest softball I've had all day, and it's a fun one. So there's actually really an interesting thing that goes in play right now with this is Northern Ireland is a free trade zone for the European Union, and it is a potential path for us that is unbelievable. The 25% tariffs will not apply to Ireland. They're not a part of the EU as far as Northern Ireland. And consequently, I can do this committee, the whole Google, Microsoft, all our major banking industries all have located their headquarters for the European theater in Northern Ireland. Maybe they anticipated this happening, but the significance of a trade commission, should tariffs go in and stick, is unbelievable because it leaves Wyoming basically in a free trade zone with Ireland, and it gives us a base level to deal on it, probably ahead of some other states.
Follow-up, Representative Provenza, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I guess my follow-up then is, you know, my understanding is that the purpose of tariffs and these trade negotiations is that we're trying to get work and products that are coming out of USA. I mean, we just passed a bill that labels USA beef and Wyoming beef. And so holding these two concepts together when we're trying to prop up this industry from US of A and then also Ireland. So what are the economic benefits to the state of Wyoming that justify having a trade commission with Ireland when we're doing these other things to say we want to support USA workers and products?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Provenza, great questions, and it's exactly what I pray for. One, we exchange tourism, and we already do on a major level. I've been a tourist there a whole bunch. We also trade beef. We send some beef to Ireland. They send some back to us. A little like the old days of Wyoming, we trade whiskey, beef, and a few other things. And you know, I think the products we have actually blend with each other, not competition. Ireland's not a big manufacturer, very small population base. They tend to be very high-tech, non-manufacturing. Like I started out, I think Wyoming and Ireland are very similar. They're an island in the middle of the ocean, and we're an island in the middle of the nation. And I think we got some great abilities to enhance each other, to enhance employment in both countries. But they're, more than employment, they're looking at someone to actually help them be great trading partners and find a way to move things. And a lot of it's technology and advanced end. In Wyoming, I pray we become bigger and bigger innovators on the stuff we've done, because that's where your real wealth comes from, in my opinion, and they're a great partner in that way.
Thank you, Senator Driscoll. Questions, Representative Thayer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's not so much a question, but I pose this question to to the Business Council, Mr. Goldberg, can you share with this committee a little more with the Taiwan, how much we are sending and how much we are trading with them, and what how it's been advantageous with our Wyoming products? That, I think that would help explain this new opportunity.
Mr. Goldberg, if you have those facts at the top of your head, sure, please tell us more.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and Representative Thayer, yeah, happy to share. As I said earlier, it's a long play. I think Idaho's had a trade office over in Taiwan for 30 years approximately. It's a low ROI. But the Wyoming brand is starting to get captured over there. So to keep it relatively short, our greatest success for product has been craft distilling. There's one in Casper and one in Gillette. I probably shouldn't name names, but, and that was like, there was skepticism over there because they tend to favor the big global brands, you know, in the advertising and all that. But they're found market niches over there. And it's been fascinating to see our office over there that we contract with to work with distributors and help the Wyoming companies ship product. We've had numerous, with our partnerships with the Small Business Development Center and Manufacturing Works, we've had numerous over the last few years opportunities for, you know, are you interested, business training opportunities. And people are either like, no, I can't keep up with that foreign trade demand, or they go through it and they're like, whoa, that's a big heavy lift. So we've got a lot of barriers to overcome. But we've got a few things like the craft distillers that are good stories. And when they're over there for food shows and tastings and stuff, and you get one of them in his cowboy hat and jeans and boots, and he's like a folk hero over there. I'll also say perhaps possibly the greatest success story is what drove the initial effort was Wyoming branded beef. And we tried everything we could. And what we learned was the barrier was on our side, the processing capacity. And we couldn't keep cutting in line at big facilities to our south across our border. And it wasn't sustainable. But it started a discussion in Wyoming. And at the time when the office opened in 2018, we had 2 small USDA processors in Wyoming. Today we have 12. And Wyoming branded beef is more readily available in Wyoming and regionally. And now you can let that market, you know, the knowledge we've had, if they choose to export nationally, internationally, how do they grow? How can they get the technical assistance and the shipping? It's just, it's not gonna pay to ship air freight beef, prime beef. They didn't, you can't send ground beef, so it's a very limited market. It just didn't pencil out. But we learned how to grow small USDA processing capacity in Wyoming. So it's kind of like our moonshot, and then the technology benefits Wyoming. So
Thank you, Mr. Goldberg.
that's why I say it's a long term, and look at Ireland.
Mr. Chairman,
too.
tiny bit of follow-up.
Senator Driscoll.
Taiwan sends us about 500,000 to 600,000 tourists a year right now. And that's one of our really big ends. I live in the tourist industry. I can tell you, my mother at the campground we're at, when the building was originally built, it had a tea room to serve Taiwanese. And that's how important tourism has been to our end of the world is they come by plane, train, and automobile, and they come in droves. And contrary to popular belief, the Taiwanese are very affluential, and they have quite a lot of money, so they're good tourists. They tend to spend when they come.
Thank you, Senator Driscoll. Representative Representative Thayer, any follow-up?
Yeah, I just, again, that test before you invest, I think with the Taiwan office, this just has led us to this next trade commission, with education, tourism, and products. So, thank you.
Don't you think? Thank you both. Thank you to the presenter. Any additional public comment in the room? We don't have anyone online. Any additional public comment? With that, I will thank you both. We will close public comment on Senate File 144. Committee, what is your pleasure? Moved by Representative Harshman, seconded by Representative Thayer. Discussions, any amendments, starting on page 1? The good bringer really worked through this pretty good, so if there's any other amendments, please chime in. Page 2. Page 3, Representative Campbell.
A question, and I'm not sure if it would add clarity. The reason I maybe would recommend it is because as I was reading through this, it wasn't clear to me. So on page 3, line 2 and line 5, the word board, I assume refers to the commission, but everywhere else they're referred to as the commission. So on page 3, line 2, line 5, the word board, I didn't automatically assume that was the commission because everywhere else they're referred to as the commission. So I didn't know if changing those two words to commission would make sense or not.
Comments, Representative Provenza.
Yeah, and I guess I'd question, and maybe I just have missed this in my 5 years, but do we have commissions that appoint someone that, when they're all appointed? So I'm wondering if maybe this was supposed to come from like the tourism board? Okay.
No, any other comments on that? It's not a motion to amend, but it's just kind of a conversation point. I will tell you this, on Thursday with tomorrow coming, I would ask you to bring this in maybe a further reading amendment. If we get there, I think that the chances of this coming through with an amendment out of this, not discouraging, I will certainly entertain it, but I think that would probably be our best strategy at this point of the race, so. Committee, any other amendments? No other amendments? Can I have a call for the question? Question being called, this would be a roll call vote for Senate File 144.
Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote for Senate File 144. Representative Campbell.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Connolly has left an absentee vote of aye. Representative Harshman.
Aye.
Representative Jarvis.
Aye.
Representative Provenza.
Aye.
Representative Storer.
Aye.
Representative Thayer.
Aye.
Representative Worf.
Aye.
Chairman Byron.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, you have 9 ayes.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Senator Driscoll. We'll be in touch. Hey, we'll jump over to our last Senate file in House TRW, the hardest working committee. We met an extra day, didn't we, Vice Chair Harshman? Sure. We did. We met an extra day, and if it's up to you, we'd probably meet tomorrow. Sure. We got 3 extra bills here, helping our Senate friends out. Really excited to hear this one. So, Chairman Case, please come on down, present your bill. Present the bill that you are here to present, Senate File 91. This is a great bill. There might be some amendments coming, but excited to learn more coming out of Select Committee on Tribal Relations. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chairman Byron. Cale Case, I'm from Lander. I'm a member of the Select Committee on Tribal Relations. In the past, I've chaired that committee. Matter of fact, Ms. Sharp over there has been the staff of the committee, and we have learned about historical aspects of Native American occupation in Wyoming, and it's been an amazing journey. You would be, we think we're everything that there is in Wyoming, I think. And it was mentioned on the Senate floor that our history of Wyoming begins with the trappers, blah, 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 blah. Sorry, no, it begins thousands of years before that. Oldest known ruins are Clovis ruins. There might be more. We're talking 13,000, 14,000 years ago. We know that there were major trading routes in Yellowstone 1,000 years ago. We know that okra from the mine at Sunrise that has been dispersed and traded all around the country, found,
hundreds and hundreds of miles away. We also know that the people that were here left behind inscriptions. Some of these inscriptions are in peril. Many of them are on property that the state of Wyoming owns. And this is a bill that does two things. First, it increases the penalty for damaging rock images on state property. It doesn't affect private property, it doesn't affect tribal lands. It's just property that we own and manage, protects those images. And that's the first part, that's 36.116. And then, as you can see, the existing fine for disturbing a prehistoric ruin is $25 on not more than $100 or 6 months in jail. We've added a section E, any person who, and that's on page 2, any person who breaks off, cracks, carves upon, writes, or otherwise marks upon, or in any manner destroys, mutilates, injures, defaces, removes, displaces, mars, or harms petroglyphs, pictographs, or historic inscriptions without consent of the State Board of Land Commissioners is guilty of a misdemeanor and shall be fined not more than $750, in prison for not more than 6 months. Kind of increase that fine a little bit to protect these resources. And that's the first part. And I know that not all these resources we're talking about are from indigenous people. We have precious inscriptions of those trappers, of those first pioneers that have been inscribed in rock or other markings that need protecting as well. The second part of the bill is an appropriation and a program to document what we have, what is being lost. So as you can imagine, one source of loss is vandalism. That's a really terrible, unfortunate one. Another source is just weathering. Perhaps it's accelerated due to changes in atmospheric composition, but there are images that were taken years ago that show things very clearly, and then you can go and look at the same site today and find degradation. I mean, sometimes it's almost impossible to find what they saw years ago. So the thinking is we could use the most modern imaging to try to assess what we have, to document what we have, to be made available to the public and available with the best technology. I want to put a couple of caveats on it. We're not making the location of the sites and the images public, because being anonymous and being hidden and unknown is a form of protection. It's probably the best form of protection we got. But we are protecting them, and we'd have those very sophisticated images available for future generations of scholars to look at. And we're just beginning to connect the dots. And there were there's astounding things we're finding out. For example, we've now learned that there was high altitude occupation in the Wind River Mountains all year round. And they hunted and they lived there. People lived there. Maybe it was the mountain Shoshone, the little people. We don't know for sure. There are images in Sinks Canyon, which kind of got me involved in this because I work with a private group to protect Sinks Canyon, and we made some money available to the department to do some imaging in Sinks Canyon because it's astounding. You know, you have these fertility symbols in the canyon with the cavern, which has some fertility significance, and then on the walls up above, you have these images of warriors. Let's just say it might be sexually graphic depictions of these warriors up above with the image down below. It's really incredible if you ever get a chance to take a look at that. It's astounding what was here and what is being lost. So we asked the department to help us. Spencer Pelton is here. He's the Wyoming State archaeologist. He's put together a program. As you can see, the miracle is an appropriation survived to make it over to you guys. And, you know, there's two important things in this bill: to have the ability to have the program to document the images and to protect them with the increased penalties. There's one more thing I'd add is that the progress in imaging has been so astounding that I don't know, that National Geographic have done a program, Scientific American has had programs where they can use artificial intelligence to work on these images, and they can bring things out that you never saw before. You might see what looks like a blank wall, and find, if you can find the right imaging in the right light and a three-dimensional and the right conditions, you could find entire panels of things that you never knew were there. And maybe there's only a remnant now. I'm not the expert on it, but I'm just totally fascinated by it. I submit this bill to your consideration. I hope that you will favorably pass it along. And I do understand about amendments and things. I think it's important to kind of keep the concept together. Nothing else is set in stone.
Thank you, Senator Case.
Thank you.
Great ending there. Representative Worf, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had a question. It just kind of jumped out at me as kind of odd, and I don't know if I'm just reading it wrong, Senator Case, but on page 2, line 13, where it talks about, you're going through talking about all the different things. You got things they can do. They can mutilate, injure, deface, all that. And then it says, on line 13, it says, without consent of the State Board of Land. Do they give consent to go out and damage those things? That's how I read that. I just, to me, that seemed a little odd. It looks like to me that the state allows you to go out and do it, so you can get permission to go out and damage those things. So, I mean, I understand what you're trying to do, but that's the only thing that stuck out to me is it says without consent. Does the state consent to do that?
Senator Case?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And Representative Worf, thank you for the question. Not in the way that we're thinking of by that. I think this is trying to be a catch-all to say that someone could do a survey, could possibly do testing on the components of the image, maybe carbon-14 dating that would be destroying. I don't know that. Mr. Pelton is here, and he could probably give more. At one time, they used to harvest these. I mean, try to cut them out.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was an effort to preserve them. I think that was more vandalism and theft, but I doubt very much that is done. We didn't come up with the language. Actually, she did.
It's her fault.
But
Lily, thought
thank
she
you.
might have done that. But that was one of the things I was wondering is if
Yeah.
we were thinking about possibly having the state collect some of this. 'Cause I know we had a
No.
tree that the House talked about that we're gonna go cut down. That was a marker on the Forest Service that we were gonna haul off. And I didn't know if that's why that's in there is there, and I guess we can see what the state has to say, but I just thought that stuck out to me that I didn't know if that was there because we're looking to do something.
And Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure what I think about going and cutting the tree down and bringing it.
Don't have to worry about it anymore.
I didn't vote for it.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Representative Worf, for that good question. I certainly, looking over to our right, would not want to amend that language with sharpen the room, so I'm gonna not entertain that, but appreciate that clarity. Representative Campbell, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, Senator Case, this may not be a good question for you. It might be better suited for the state parks. Because I have a question about enforcement. So we have higher penalties. How do we enforce that? How do we know? Do we have cameras on these? How do we know? Would be my first question. And second question, in terms of the appropriation to our Department of State Parks, if included in that, or some of the thought is, are we going to need to hire an additional person who would oversee, or is this something, I appreciate our state parks tend to be stretched pretty thin as far as the number of folks and the requests we have of them. So, yeah, how that would work for them, and if we need to bring in more people, or if they feel like, no, we can manage this. Yeah, just need some resources to do it. So, and that may not be the best question for you, so feel free to pass it off to the parks.
Senator Case, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Representative Campbell. Just a little dab into it. The increasing the penalty, they're not necessarily protected with cameras or things like that. That's a possibility down the line, especially some sites are more astounding than others. But just increasing the penalty and making that we care about these things is kind of more the purpose, I think, than anything. With respect to the estimate, Mr. Pelton provided a calculation that he can share with you, but it doesn't include some contract work. So it's not entirely within personnel that we have now. In Sings Canyon, I might add, we were able to provide some money that was able to keep some seasonal employees that happened to be archaeologists that came and worked in the parks. Seasonally, they weren't really doing much archaeology, but we were able to get them engaged to do some of this work with the images that are there. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Case. And certainly we could get some clarity as we progress through testimony. Anyone else have? Representative Jarvis, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So Senator, I just have a quick question on this. And having worked and served the Arapaho tribe for a few years, how are they weighing in on cultural property when this comes to this? And did they give statements on how they felt about that?
Senator Case.
Mr. Chairman, we had 3 meetings in Fort Washakie. We had representatives from both tribal governments and citizens of both tribes that testified on the issue. This is state land that's off the reservation. They still have a cultural tie to all there are multiple tribes that have cultural ties to these images and I'm not going to say, I think officially it was positive, but I'm not going to say that everybody's happy. And the only reason I say that is a lot of people think we should just leave these alone, but they're in our care. They're on state land. They're known. We're not going to make them more known, and we just want to document them and have them available before future times. We're not necessarily going to go search on for more images. We're not trying to, and we would be consulting, I understand, with tribal people in doing this work. They're rock images. They're not necessarily, we're not talking about burial artifacts or incredibly sensitive things. But I don't have the best answer to that, because I will tell you, I've represented people of the Wind River Indian Reservation for a long time. I'm very proud to do so. It's not always the easiest to get straight direction, and they're just like anybody else. They have different opinions about things. I think if we can do this in a responsible manner, stick clearly to our lane, which is the state lands, which we are responsible for, and consult with them in an effective manner, share information with them, respect their wishes about sites that might be particularly important or sensitive. I think we can build a partnership that'll bridge for a long time. I think people we got in the state parks now and the department are the right people to help do that. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Senator Case. Thank you, Representative Jarvis. Committee, it is 1:45. I see another senator in here. She may want to comment on this. She may not. Okay. And with that, I do see a couple of agencies, so I certainly want to start with you, Senator Case. We'll hop over to agencies here.
Great.
And we'll talk a little bit more about Senate File 91. I'm going to go ahead and bring up state parks now. And then hopefully we'll have time in the next few minutes here to work the bill. If the committee so chooses, welcome to House TRW. Excited to chat more about Senate File 91. Please introduce yourself for everyone, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, committee. I'm Sarah Sheen. I'm Deputy Director for State Parks Cultural Resources. I will try to be brief, so if you have any questions for us, we can try and answer those for you. Obviously, Dr. Spencer Pelton is with me. He's the state archaeologist, and I'm an archaeologist, but I'm not a practicing archaeologist anymore, so he has all the right answers. I just want to say I very much appreciate, this is obviously an important bill to us in the sense that these are significant places that need care and protections and are very fragile in nature. I wanted to go back and answer a question that Representative Campbell asked about subcontracting, and the answer to that is yes, there's, in the appropriation language, there's provisions for that so that we can do subcontracting work for, like the 3D modeling, for example, in particular, would be something we would probably subcontract out. The other important piece, I guess I would just say about the appropriation, and even if there wasn't an appropriation, I think it's just important to understand that recording, documenting these places is going to be extremely helpful in order to prosecute anything that does happen under this law. I think it's really difficult, to hold somebody accountable if you don't have good evidence for what the place looked like before it was damaged. And in terms of the questions about damaging the state, potentially damaging these things intentionally, I don't think there's any intention to do that. I don't think there's any intention to remove any of these things from the location they're in now. On occasion, rock art sites can be further tested with some minimally intrusive techniques to do some dating. I could see something like that, but there's certainly nothing like that being proposed currently. So with that, I'm gonna see if Spencer has any more to add, and then we'll take questions if you have them for us.
Thank you, Machine. Dr. Pelton, please, welcome.
Thank you, everyone. Spencer Pelton, the state archaeologist. I don't have a whole lot to add to this. I think the one thing I will reemphasize is that the documentation aspect of this, in my mind, does really three things. The first thing it does is just lay a baseline for understanding what these sites look like in a moment in time. These things are continually being vandalized every year. We've looked at rock art sites within the past year that have inscriptions on them from 2023, 2022. This is an ongoing issue. It's not really stopping. It's not getting any better. When you look at dates carved on these things, they pretty much just go all the way back, and they just keep going forward to the future. So that documentation part of it, first thing it does is really lay a baseline for understanding what the vandalism looks like in this year, this time, so that if they are defaced further in the future, we have something to look back on and say, hey, look, this is different. And it helps us build a case for that. I think the second thing it does is it helps us prioritize protections for these things. Once we document all these sites on state lands, there's about 120 of them, we'll be able to see very clearly which ones are most in danger of being destroyed into the future, either through erosion or through vandalism. And from that knowledge, we can then take some steps to actually place additional protections, cameras, monitoring by local law enforcement or parks officials, that kind of thing. And really the third piece of it is public education. Everything my office does, I want to make sure the people of Wyoming get a return on investment, creating these sorts of models that we can put online so that people all throughout the state, all throughout the country really can engage with these resources, no matter who you are, no matter how old or where you are, so that we can actually get knowledge about these things out into the world and people can derive some value from that, educational or research or spiritual or whatever it might be. That's really all I wanted to emphasize, is that the documentation of this stuff fulfills a lot of different goals, some of which have a direct benefit to the people of Wyoming.
Thank you, Dr. Pelton. Committee, any questions of the good Dr. Representative Worf, please?
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, is there any concern, I mean, obviously we know these sites exist, but is there any concern that as we go out and we document that we're gonna draw attention to those sites more? Because that to me seems like the risk that we run. Obviously, I agree with your three points, but it seems like that is one of the things that comes from this, is that we're going to make it more known. And I think about Yellowstone National Park and what we've done to that. I mean, it seems like we almost love things to death once we identify them, but Is there concerns about that? And how would you address them?
Representative Worth, Chairman Byron. I guess I'll say two things about that. The first is that we'll be very diligent. We always are very diligent about maintaining secrecy around actual locations of these things. There's actual laws in place that kind of prevent us from divulging that. So we don't want to produce a map and we put out a brochure or something to put site locations. That's not a good idea. On the other hand, in my experience, I think that simply raising awareness about the significance of these things through some sort of public interpretation of them engenders a sense of pride and care for them more than anything. A lot of people simply, they just don't know that you're not supposed to do that. But by getting word out that these are important places, important images for a lot of different people in the state, maybe I'm being naive about it, but in my experience, that really helps foster an ethic of stewardship for this stuff that people might not already have.
Thank you for that good question, Representative Worf, and thank you for that answer. Dr. Pelton, committee, any other questions? See none, we're gonna head over to our next state agency. Thank you both. Maybe stay close. We only have a few more minutes here, so in case we have to hit you with another question.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Jason Crowder, Interim Director for the Office of State Lands and Investments. With me, I have Cody Booth. He's our Assistant Director for our Trust Land Management Division. Really don't have a whole lot more to add to the conversation that's already been held for this bill, but happy to answer any questions that the committee may have. I did want to respond to one question that Representative Worf brought up about, does the Board of Land Commissioners actively issue permits for degradation of these assets? And no, the answer is no. This is a very dark corner of the statute that we don't approach very often. However, earlier parts of the statute do talk about fossils, and the Board of Land Commissioners does issue permits for fossil removal. We do that through commercial and scientific and educational purposes. So this is just kind of an extension of that, that there is oversight by the Board of Land Commissioners for these resources on state land. That's where that starts, and we just keep continuing that through. So if you do remove something, you are possibly harming it. We just want to make sure that we're consistent all the way through the statutes. Mr. Chairman, really that's what I wanted to give for you. We've worked closely with the Department of State Parks and Cultural Resources, have a great relationship with them for anything we find on state lands. Really are trying to protect and do whatever we can to further that effort ongoing. And I think one more reason that this is important to really identify and document is that we have a lot of other uses on state land that could have a detrimental effect to these resources. If we don't know where they are, if we don't have good people like the ones behind us that know where they are, we don't even know where they are. We may do something that harms that unknowingly. So this is an important effort for us. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Crowder. Great to have you in here on this good bill and a feel-good bill, and a pretty important bill for some of our history. Committee, any questions for the interim director? Any questions for Mr. Booth while he's at the hot seat? Not seeing any. Appreciate that. Thank you for being here. We may have questions as we work maybe through some amendments. Appreciate taking the time. Anyone else in the room that would like to comment on Senate File 91? Anyone else in the room? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. Committee, what is your pleasure on Senate File 91? Move the bill by Representative Harshman, seconded by Representative Provenza. Sorry, my ears getting like my good vice chairs. Seconded by Representative Provenza. Committee, I'm going to start us off, if I may. It's kind of a large amendment. This bill didn't seem to have a lot of legs. I think you've been provided with the amendment in your packet. And let me tell you the intent, and 3-page bill, 4-page bill. So let me just tell you the intent. You know, it was buried in committee number 2, and we resurrected it out of committee number 2, obviously with what happened yesterday and with where the current temperature is. I think that the appropriation would potentially make this bill go away for a long time. So I'm gonna kind of stay general before I get into my details, but I'm gonna go ahead and amend out the appropriation, and then we're gonna clean up some of the language that came after that, specific to what the state parks can or cannot do in the future related to the surveys, the documenting, and some of the three-dimensional language. And really, my intent is only there to broaden it so state parks can get started on this. And I will tell you, I did have the opportunity today to work with state parks on this amendment. They're supportive. But with that, and I believe it also has it, I'm gonna walk through it real quick. Page 1, line 5, delete providing appropriation. Page 2, line 18 after section 2, delete the remainder of this line. Page 2, line 19. Delete the appropriation. Oh, and then gross version, it's a little different, but we can work that out. Delete the appropriation. Page 2, line 21, and once again, I might have been working off the wrong version, but delete for the purposes of and replace with may. So actually, it's on the end of line 21 onto line 22 on that. Page 2, line 22, change the surveying to survey, change the documenting to document, add create, and after, and delete the three-dimensional. With three-dimensional, I find to be very important, but certainly does add some cost to it. I think that down the road, the department can look into that, but two-dimensional is also great, and any sort of documentation, as we heard, as it relates back to that statute, you know, on lines 9 through 16 is important. Page 3, line 4, delete after landowner and delete the remainder. Page 3, lines 5, delete 5 through 13, and then ultimately that deletes the effective date. So I add back in our effective date, which is this act is effective immediately upon completion language. So with that, there might be some conforming stuff I can work on with LSO, but I think you understand my intent to that. And really my hope in doing this is to keep this bill moving and give them the opportunity, and we've done this in my short career a number of other times, so we can get it in the statute, and I obviously would love if we could get an appropriations out of that committee, but I'm just not sensing we will be able to do that. So with that, that is my amendment. Representative Provenza.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I'm just struck by the fact that we put $10 million for gold bars in our statute, and I appreciate the amendment, because I do think, like, we need to get this done, but I'm just, yeah, I guess I'm just want to express that I'm heartbroken at the direction that the body upstairs has continued to take.
Thank you, Representative Provenza. I actually probably need a second on that amendment to discuss it. Seconded by Representative Wharf. Representative Provenza, I too am struck, and this was a bill that I appreciate some of our NGOs that came forward and said we need to save this committee bill that people worked really hard on. Senator Case worked really hard on, and others and departments. So I echo your statement, Representative Provenza. Anyone else? Vice Chair Harshman.
Just to be clear too, what this bill leaves you with no appropriation, it does not need to be re-referred. That's the whole idea. Take another day and another. So there's all kinds of times to amend it on committee of the whole, second and third reading. So just keep it moving.
Thank you, Vice Chair Harshman, for that comment. That also part of the intent, certainly, and it's hard to put this on a department that is already struggling with the funding that we all talk about, and we'll get to learn more about in the interim, but certainly the intent, as you guys hear, is to keep the ball rolling. Representative Thayer.
Yeah, I think that is a great way, and also I think the important part that I heard from is that we put the enforcement piece in. So, you know, if we would stall this bill, then we're stalling everything. And so I think there's a fine line. So this enforcement piece is important.
Thank you.
Okay, good amendment.
Thank you. Representative Wharf, please.
I'm just gonna say real quick, don't lose heart. There's next year. Next year will be a budget year. We can figure this stuff out. I think this is a smart move, because I think this bill would not have survived if we left that in. So I was struggling with it because I hadn't seen the proposed amendment, but that was, when I seen that, I thought it's dead. But with that amendment, I think we can get this through. And I've always said I'm never gonna give it a department assignment without the money. So you guys have to remind me next year when we're doing that, we need to make good on that promise, because I do seriously, I do not like giving assignments and not covering those, so help us remember that. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Wharf. I apologize, as my desk mate, we were working on so many things this morning, I didn't have a chance to tell you I was doing this, so I'll make sure to chat with my neighbor next time. Committee, any other questions on the amendment before I call for a vote? Okay, on the amendment, question being called, all those in favor of my amendment, as presented, say aye. Aye. Against, no. That amendment passes, and I will work with you to make sure I got it on the right version. I was kind of working fast this morning, given our last 14 hours. Committee, any other amendments on Senate File 91? Question being called, this is be a roll call vote on Senate File 91.
Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote on Senate File 91 engrossed and as amended. Representative Campbell?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Connolly has left an absentee vote of aye. Representative Harshman?
Aye.
Representative Jarvis?
Aye.
Representative Provenza?
Aye.
Representative Storr? Representative Thayer?
Aye.
Representative Wharf?
Aye.
Chairman Byron?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, you have 9 ayes.
Thank you, committee. With that, we are adjourned, and